Good afternoon and most welcome to Heidegger 897. We are rapidly progressing towards the 900, the big 900. What will happen? Nobody knows. But I would have to say, in retrospect, these last hundreds has been one of the most interesting lectures I recorded. It seems that all the knowledge that we gained and acquired during hard work is now sort of bouncing back, and it's deepening. And for some reason, all those hours of strain comes back as a gratitude. I'm very happy for that. Today's lecture is a little about inspired by Immanuel Levinas and the other, the significant other. And I call the lecture The Mirror and the Other, because both the mirror image and the other of Levinas are things that are radically different in a way. Radically same and radically different. The other, or the radically different that we can mirror ourselves in, and how we calibrate our precision and perception. And this is something actually called mirror neurons. Is that all our thinking system is based on something called neural imaging. Mirror neural system was recently discovered. It has only a couple of decades behind it, but it means that a very big part of our perception is this mirroring, and it's automatic, it's beyond our conscious control, and it is happening all the time. So reflection is a very big part of perception. And we need a significant other or a radically different other to have this perception working. And that is to calibrate ourselves, to help that there doesn't become a loop where we reflect on our own active perception. Let me just put in some neurological facts here. Perception, we discovered, is mostly active, much more active than passive. And of course this flies into the eyes of the general perception of perception being mainly passive. 3 times as many neurons are going out to the sensory organs, eyes, and the ear, and also the nose. And that means that, far from the general conception of perception being passive, it's an active process, and it's depending on our own will. And the very idea or gestalt that the world is out there has a very harmful effect on our neurological system. It's more than enough to have that to end up in a harmful or even disastrous loop. And this is the subject for this lecture: how our metaphysical gestalt actually affects our everyday life and makes us cut off from an external reality, and we end up in a confined system of consistency and non-paradoxity. And I make, of course, a parallel here between what we discussed earlier in mathematics, within physics, within biology, within sociology, within psychology. Those are all based on the closed system idea, something that is often called representationalism. Representationalism does not take in anything from the outside. Instead, it creates a proxy called reality with a big R, and it bonds us on this self-made reality on an individual basis, and there is nothing other entering. In the philosophy of Levinas, he shows, in order to have a perception of both oneself, one's self-identity and ego or I, and also of reality outside ourselves, we need to have a significant other or a radically difference. And all systems that are only directed internally cease to grow, and they end up in a sort of equilibrium. And this is, oddly enough, the very same equilibrium that happens to a deceased heart. There's no other in the deceased heart, and the sinus curve is absolutely perfect. It doesn't have any deviances, it doesn't have any otherness, and this leads to cardiac arrest. So as you see, there are very interesting parallels between our biology, the system that we call psychology today, and also spiritual things, which I will enter later on. Levinas was a Jewish mystic in some sense as well, I would say. So his otherness that he speaks to is an invitation to the higher. Very interesting. If we don't have any interaction or very little interaction, there will be a diminishing power and meaning of the other within ourselves and also outside ourselves. The equilibrium I mentioned before, often called a static point of the neurological system, is most well, in a way it could be an attraction for the individual to get into, and once we are becoming isolated, that happens much easier, and we become looking into ourselves to find proofs for our views, our propositions, our ideas of reality, and then we confirm them. And in worst case scenario, we can take things that we in some way believe to be outside ourselves and confirm them even further. And this is the spiral that goes down into self-confirmation. And it's very hard to get out of this spiraling down into the well. One could say that this well ends into the Platonic cave, or can also end, as I'm going to mention, something that Levinas takes up, mental disease. There is a combination there that's very interesting between a consistent system like the heart and the diseased mind of a person that is mentally ill. And usually I want to put this in example. I visited Oxford a couple of times. I had a friend who was studying there at Christ Church College. And one thing is very noticeable in Oxford is that there are an abundance of pubs. There are at least 100, might even be more. And my friend here often mentioned that many Swedes and Norwegians, he were actually from Norway himself, mentioned it was odd with so many pubs. And they thought the pubs to be something other, in a not a radical sense, but an other in terms of absence. And he actually had a Swede I also known called Sven, who explained to him that the learning happens within the locale of the university, in the scholarly place, and that is closed off, and there is where the learning take part, in a defined space, but also in a limited time. For instance, between 9:30 and 14:30 or something like that. And it sounded so odd when he explained this, because he thought the pubs to be completely external. And my friend, he said directly, why are they there? And the Swedish guy, he just answered, well, that's just for people to have fun or relax. And he felt that to be absolutely ludicrous. The pub's been there since the instigation of Oxford at least 700 years ago. They are an integral part of the learning, of understanding and of knowledge. This is the otherness that we need, without contact to radical otherness, and it also needs to be completely random. That's maybe the most important thing. We will not have identity without this otherness. We need to have an impetus from the outside. It could be the environment, it could be other people, and that is the force that makes what we learn to become more objective, so to speak. It actually applies to reality, because reality is not foundationally based on a representation or a world at large. It is based on difference and on being other. And if we decide before what we should take in and what we should term as being valuable, important, more present, more truth-like, we are entering the spiral. And this is a fourth take on the closing of the intellectual mind of the Western world. This foreclosure of the mind and taking away everything that is exogenous, coming from the outside. Because coming from the outside means to be radically different. If you make a choice, you are already entering the spiral down the well. You decide subjectively, emotionally, what should fit into being objective, true, or valid, or functional maybe is even a better word. My friend always said, without the pubs there wouldn't be Oxford, would be nothing at all. And that shows that in the interaction comes knowledge. And it's still preserved there. I would say Oxford is one of those universities that still keeps the banner high when it comes to knowledge and understanding and learning. Other examples of absence that you can shy away from and also is kept in Oxford, also in Cambridge, is the banner of tradition. Most Swedes, Norwegian, Danish people think that to be completely external, having nothing to do with the thing, having nothing to do with learning things. Some sort of decoration or supplement which you can take away, and you can preserve the essence, the inside of the matrushka. Matrushka is this Russian doll, where it could give the impression that the most essential, the most important thing is the doll further in, and all the shells have nothing to see, nothing to do with the inner core of the archaea of the matrushka. It's almost like building up an interesting mirror image and comparing this mirror image to a more functional one, more workable one, more allowing one, that allows for difference. And it's a difference that's not judged pre-handed by these people who decide subjectively, emotionally, by the moment, not for a long time, just by the moment, come to Oxford and say those are exogenous, they should go, which is so completely ludicrous. And you also have the architecture in Oxford. It's tradition, and it seemed to be non-important for the knowledge which is inside. Sorry to take it. Ian McGilchrist have indicated somewhere that modern universities, like the red brick universities they call in England, are maybe a flower bed for mental illness. There is a huge difference between the traditional university and the red brick universities when it comes to the indication of mental illness. It is more, they are more closed off systems. Maybe using terms on Levinas, one would say they're less humane, they are less spiritual, they are less of the soil. I think that's an expression he uses to show how we get back to the flesh, how reality is needed. It's not something extra add-on. It's not a special feature of a car where you can add air conditioning or decoration on the side, those horrendous stripes that some people add. Those are add-ons. They don't help with the locomotion. But these things are not add-ons. They are something that preserves the essential of knowledge and are a part of knowledge, but at the very same time not a part of knowledge. Otherness is important. To be other is something that is needed for self-identity, and this is also shown from mirror neurons. People who are not really acclaimed or skilled in using their mirror neurons become less eye strong, as they call it. They lose their sense of identity. And it's a lostness of identity that happens when you start only to self-reflect, this short span, and all your thinking gets confirmed by yourself, and they get the stamp of being either true, sane, rational, and in the end you prove yourself to be completely right. And that is not knowledge. That is you reflecting yourself. Without the external, it's like having a flower bed without a valid soil, like putting the flowers directly on a rock where there is no place for water to accumulate, so the roots can be neutered, but there is no soil either to give the plants perseverance in rain and in other climate factors like wind, coldness, so forth. So it's a sort of thinking that also says that the ego of today is so much more powerful than the ego of the yesterday. It says that now is the only place of knowledge. And it's one of the harsher words coming from my friend, is like, that's like spitting knowledge in the face. It is like intentionally trying to get rid of knowledge, to throw the baby out with the bathwater or expel it like the evil. And of course, once more comes the trope with the autoimmune disease, where the autoimmune system gets so accustomed to live in a clean environment, free from dust and external bacteria that attack the immune system, but also makes it strong. One could say that bacteria are the other of our immune system. And since we get rid of the bacteria, that actually started quite recently, in the beginning of the last century, when the discoveries within medicine that bacteria are something of a living being, and it could be expelled from the hospitals for good reasons by using disinfectants, and all of a sudden much more people survived in the hospitals, and that was brought further and further and further, and it became a presencing of the pure, of the clean. But then this knowledge entered the houses, first by doctors' families, who told the cleaning lady to clean extra specially hard, using maybe even disinfectants like chlorine, which were in abundance in the beginning of the 20th century. And it was actually in doctors' families that the first cases of modern allergy started. An allergy is a disease where the system attacks itself, not the real threats. And one of the things that it attacks is the body's natural response to, for instance, pollen coming from the flowers. We are here in the spring. It's a very lovely, I would say, half springy day. It's no plants has come out yet, only onions, but it feels like soon they are starting to pop out, and when they come out they will also bring pollen. And today in Sweden, somewhere in the vicinity of 25–30% are allergic to pollen. That was not the case in the 19th century. This is a dispelling of the wholeness. Things that we don't know about. We know about bacteria, and we say that covers the whole thing. I think it would be just to say that the red brick universities, with their horrible, ugly structures and less humane environment, often structured in the writing table of the architect, not thinking of human beings, just using a measuring stick and a ruler to make his horrible buildings, and construct the University of Manchester, which is just a horrification, and thereby casting out knowledge, like our cleanliness in the home, unintentionally casted out health, because one of the biggest health issues today are not the communicable diseases. Communicable diseases means that a disease is transplanted from one person like another. They are not the main problem anymore, but the autoimmune diseases. The ones that get from the system not getting pure otherness anymore. Otherness is important, and it will always remain important, because it's a part of what is sane individual stamina, both from the corporal perspective, also from the psychic perspective, but also from the spiritual perspective. We have also made our churches cleaner, taking away, why not exercise? Because they were a nuisance, they were a pollution to the clear picture of the world. They were an anomaly, only used in special cases. So why not get rid of it? Have a cleaner surface. Let it shine. Don't let the otherness, because the otherness has this other character, which is randomness, in a good way. Because it doesn't always turn up. And that is not allowed in the metaphysics of presence. Doesn't allow for circumstances that are unusual, or sort of compare that to a person who's suffering. I never suffered from acne, but a person that suffered from acne. I have a friend who used to do that. But still to this day, he tries to get rid of things that turn up in his skin long after his acne disappeared. And I think that's an idea of perfectness. And actually it's very close to the change of statues in the Roman Empire at the later periods. Because all of a sudden, and that happened so quickly, especially in the Emperor Constantine's rule, all of a sudden the statues are losing their scars, their blemishes, holes coming from smallpox, very common, and other things. They disappear from the faces and they get completely bland. And also features which are not part of the history or disease, like a protruding nose or lips that are too small or too big, also disappears. This is this idea of self-identity in a not so benign way. It's a malignant almost. And I always thought about that when I read it the first time. Maybe that helped to the destruction of the Roman Empire. This weird idea of beauty. Because still to this day, those statues don't look anything nice. They look just horrible, scary. I think my first idea when I saw Emperor Constantine's statue was like he was alien-like. And why are the aliens looking so bad? Well, they don't have any scars. They don't look normal. They're too perfect. Both their eyes are situated in 5 centimeter distance and so forth. Everything is, to some demented mind, perfect beings. Or as, why not the robot of HAL in the movie 2000 by Stanley Kubrick's, where HAL says that he doesn't like human beings because they are not perfect. I think that was filmed many years ago. I think that HAL vision has now been transplanted into the idea of the universities. It sounded absurd in the 1970s when the movie came out. It sounded something a computer would have said. But now it's normal. The imperfections, the otherness, that is not part of humanity anymore. It should go. You can have a look at the pigeons over here. They look really, really pudgy today. In my youth, I always thought these big pigeons were really fat pigeons, but the fatness is not coming from their bodies, it's coming from their feathers. It's a protection against the wind. This extra air is not an addendum, it serves as an isolation, but maybe it makes a hunter disappointed. Once the feathers are out, you end up with a very skinny pigeon. Because those are not fat. They are fat in the autumn, when it's due, not after the winter. And of course, this is a vision, this is a fanaticism, and it was shared by Hilbert and Gödel, and they wanted this. We need also to realize there is a real intention about this development. Knowledge is being discarded by will force. It's an almost, I would say, an ideology. Not maybe, I wouldn't take it so far, but they really want to go in that direction. And I think that is also what Ian McGilchrist are pointing towards. And when I read his first couple of chapters in The Matter with Things, which I started with, I realized that could also be the cause of his massive depression. He suffered a depression for almost 2 decades, coming and going, and looking at this, and as a person who's that knowledgeable as Ian McGilchrist, of course you can end up in depression, seeing the most valuable thing in human existence, knowledge, being casted out, and being done so in a manner that is almost intentional. I wouldn't say the whole way, but it's a great force. I would like to write an email to Ian McGilchrist. I already started that he shouldn't be so depressed. Well, he's not depressed anymore, but the negative idea, I think it's not valid. I think there is hope, because in the end this ideology is bound to go so deep into the well that it just has to come out. That's the working of reality, because there is a reality that is different, and sometimes maybe he forgets that, because we cannot command nature in that way. We cannot radically destroy reality. That will not happen. We can go far, yes. We can end a civilization, maybe like the Roman Empire. I don't know if it happened. It was just a suggestion. But we cannot destroy reality. The otherness will always be there. And in a way, it hasn't even disappeared in the minds of the people who are trying to take it away. And that's why I'm saying the attention is not completely there. It's more of a mass movement, and it's a movement that has lack in awareness. And the lack of awareness is important, because that means that the intention cannot be very strong. It needs a lot of people, and needs those people to wanting to be unaware. But awareness in itself takes us in the other direction, no matter what sort of awareness. The awareness doesn't choose in that way. Doesn't have to be a specific ideology, because this will heal itself. There's no way. I'm almost thinking about that character in the movie Jurassic Park. I still like him, with the glasses and the cowboy boots from Texas. What was his name? Chris Lockwood. And he's talking about, there's a discussion turning up in the movie, and
he's the professor in
Chaos
Theory.
Yeah, yeah, and he's really tough, and he's very modern, and he charms the lady and everything. And still to this day, they ask him to perform this trick with a water drop. I saw it on one of the late night shows, where he shows that minuscule differences in the small hairs of your hand will affect, almost by small microscopic gravity, the drop to go another way and construct another river of sorts. So still is performing that. But of course, I realized that knowledge wasn't coming from him. He's just imitating Blake. Blake was actually involved a bit. But it doesn't matter. He says in one of the conversations, and somebody saying, "We are destroying the world." And he just, "Are you ludicrous? We can't destroy anything. Do you think you're bigger than the force of nature?" And I think he had a point there. It cannot be destroyed. Chaos theory is one of those things. I won't bring it up in this lecture, but it's very indicative. And what is chaos theory if not the invitation of the otherness, of the disturbances, of the thing that is molesting you or paining you, the thing sticking out, or the itch, or I would say even proper horrible pain. That is also part of reality. And real suffering doesn't come to the person suffering from pain until he wants to discard of that pain. That's when it starts. Think about it. We did not have any painkillers before at least 1840 or 1830. And did people complain about pain? Very seldom. Very seldom. We have our own arsenal of painkillers in our body. And all of them, trust me, This is proven. All of them are much more effective even than the most strongest one you can find today, which I think is phetalene, something like that. They will take away, but you need to accept the pain. Not accepting the pain means that you make it a disturbance and you want to get rid of it. In that process, the pain becomes something bad, and it will affect you in a way that is really horrendous. But sort of in a way, it starts with yourself. Self-reflecting, I have a pain, it's my pain, it exists, and then you're on. So I think there is great hope around the corner, and the world cannot be moved in that sense. We always get somewhere, and it's because of our minority position, as few going against the stream. But I would say the stream is changing now. There is great source of hope. Only the thing that his book is coming up on the bestseller list is important. I think that is not something to diminish. It's very important. I think that's just about enough for today, or now anyway. I say thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.
Thank you.